Nedarim Daf Samach Beis begins following on the Gemara's discussion of the end of the fig and grape harvest season. The Gemara is going to bring a few more halachos that are related to the end of that season. That's going to take us into a bit of Agadata, some stories, and the Gemara will go into whether or not a Talmid Chacham is allowed to use his status as a Talmid Chacham for personal gain. The Gemara will bring some stories on that subject. Towards the end of the daf, I'll get to another Mishnah which will define more terms in time as far as they apply to Hilchos Nedarim. So let's begin. We've said that the end of the harvest season, at least harvest for figs, is when people fold away their knives and put them away. Those are the knives that were used to trim the cakes of figs that were dried out and packed into nice round circles. So the Gemara says, we have a brisa that says that time is also the time at which any remaining figs that are left in the field become hefker. This is relevant to two halachas. First of all, anybody is allowed to eat them. Second of all, anybody who wants to harvest them does not have to give meiser, because the halacha is there is no chiyav meiser on something which is hefker. Then the Gemara brings a couple of stories. The Gemara says that Rabbi and Rabbi Yasi bar Rabbi Yehuda traveled to a certain place at the time when people had already folded away the knives there, and therefore, al pi halacha, we just said all the figs left in the field were hefker. Therefore, Rabbi ate the figs from the field. However, Rabbi Yasi bar Yehuda did not. The owner of the field later came out and he said, "Why are the Chachamim not eating the figs? It's already after the time of the folding of the knives here." Now, the Gemara had said at the end of the last daf that it's not when all the knives are folded, it's when the majority of knives are folded, and therefore any certain individual may not have folded his knife, but still we say that his das is batel to all the other people, the majority of the people in the area, and if it's majority of the knives are folded, then you can consider everything as hefker. But this person came out and he said it's after the time of the folding of the knives. Why are the Chachamim not eating? Referring to Rabbi Yasi bar Rabbi Yehuda. So Gemara says that after he heard that, Rabbi Yasi bar Rabbi Yehuda still did not want to eat. He was afraid that the person was being sarcastic and speaking out of anger, and that he did not actually mean that he was mafkir it, and he did not really want them to eat. Another similar story the Gemara brings that Rabbi Chama by Rabbi Chanina went to a certain place. It was already the time where most of the knives had been folded away there, and he ate figs that left out in the field, but his attendant did not want to eat, and he said, "Why don't you eat?" Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yasi taught us the name of his father that the time when the most of the knives have been folded, one is permitted, there is no isser of stealing, and there is no meiser. Next story the Gemara brings that Rabbi Tarfon also ate figs after the time that most of the knives have been folded away. The owner of the field in this case was upset, and he grabbed Rabbi Tarfon and he stuffed him into a sack and he started carrying him to the river to throw him in. So while he was in, Rabbi Tarfon said, "Oy vey" to Tarfon, that this person is killing him. By doing so, he let the person know that he was none other than the great Talmid Chacham, Rabbi Tarfon. When the person heard that, he dropped him and he ran away. So Rabbi Avos and Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel, all the rest of his life, Rabbi Tarfon was upset about this incident because he said, "Woe is to me that I used the crown of Torah for personal gain here. I let the person know that this was Rabbi Tarfon, that I was Rabbi Tarfon in order to save my life, and therefore I used my Torah learning for personal gain here." Now, it's not really the gain is not saving his life. He could have saved his life in another way. He could have theoretically just paid the man off for the figs that he took from him. But he said that he's Rabbi Tarfon in order that the man should run away, and therefore was more of a financial gain than a life-saving gain. Now, the Gemara continues, and it says that the reason why he was so upset is, like Rabbi Bar Bachana says in Rabbi Yechanan, anybody who uses the crown of Torah for his personal gain is torn out of the world. Kal v'chomer from Belshazzar. Belshazzar, king of Persia, used the kalim of the Beis Hamikdash. The kalim of the Beis Hamikdash lost their kedusha; they became chol once the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, as it says, "Ubo b'pritzim v'chileluha," that people burst into the Beis Hamikdash and defiled it, which means that it became chol. So Belshazzar, who used the no longer kadosh kalim of the Beis Hamikdash for his own personal use, still he was torn out of the world, as it says, "Ba balayla katel Belshazzar." That same night that he used them, he was killed. So, Kal v'chomer, somebody who uses Kisser Shel Torah, which Torah is Chai v'Kayim La'olam, it lasts and lives forever, certainly he is going to be torn from the world. Now, the Gemara asks, if Rabbi Tarfon was eating after the time that the knives were majority folded, most of them were already folded away, why did this guy care so much that he wanted to stuff him into a sack and throw him in the river? So Gemara answers is because he had somebody stealing his grapes all year round, and he thought that this was the guy. It wasn't just these little grapes as he was eating now. He thought he caught the guy who'd been stealing all year. So Gemara says, if that's true, so then Rabbi Tarfon could not have paid for just the grapes that he ate. This guy thought that he owed all the grapes that he stole the entire year. So why was he upset that he escaped by saying he was Rabbi Tarfon? He couldn't have bought his way out of it. Gemara says, no, he still could have. Rabbi Tarfon was extremely wealthy, and he would have been able to pay for all the grapes that were stolen throughout the year without identifying himself as Rabbi Tarfon to get free. Now the Gemara goes deeper into the concept of Talmid Chacham not using Torah for personal gain. And we're being surprised that says La'avos Hashem Elokecha quotes the pasuk in Devarim La'avos Hashem Elokecha L'shmai B'Koyu L'Davka B'Y Ki Chayecha V'Arech Yamecha, that you should love Hashem, to listen to His voice and to stick to Him. That means that a person should not say that I'm going to learn Psukim, I'm going to learn Chumash in order that I'll be called a Chacham, I'll learn Mishnayos in order that people call me Rebbe, I'll learn Gemara in order that I should be old and I should be invited to sit in the yeshiva. No, you shouldn't do that. You should sit and learn out of love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in the end, the honor will come. How do you know that? Because it says, Kashrei malatz b'yisecha, tie them to your fingers, meaning have the Torah close at hand, you should know it well. Kasvim al luach libacha, write them upon the board of your heart. And it says, Derchel darchei noyam, and eitz chaim hilam achazikim b'v'samcha me'ushar. The Torah's ways are sweet, and the one who sticks with it will be happy in the end, and therefore the honor or whatever it is you're seeking will come in the end. It says Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzadok, do things l'shem shemayim, and speak in them l'shem shemayim, and don't make them into a crown that you should become great through them, and don't make them into a axe or a shovel that you should work with, that you should use as your parnasa. Well, how do you see that? Again, the Brisa brings the Kavachomer from Belshazzar, king of Persia, used the kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, which had become chol, and he was torn out of the world. Certainly somebody who uses Torah is going to be torn out of the world if he uses it for his own personal gain. Now, the Gemara brings a little bit more about the halachos of Talmidei Chachamim using Torah for their gain. Rava says it is permitted for somebody to identify himself as Talmid Chacham in a place where they don't know him. How do you see that? When Ovadia met Eliyahu Hanavi, he identified himself. He said, "Va'avadcha yirei Hashem min urav." I've been a God-fearing Jew from my youth. And Eliyahu didn't know, and therefore he revealed himself. So Gemara asks, why did Rabbi Tarfon have a problem saying who he was to this person who didn't know who he was? So Gemara answers, because he could have gotten it out of it by paying, and he should not have identified himself in order to get free, just to save the money that he would have had to pay, even though he's paying for something which he shouldn't really be obligated. Now, Rava asks a contradiction. It says, Avadcha Yirei Hashem min urav, Ovadia, who identified himself as a Yirei Shemayim to Eliyahu. On the other hand, it says in the pasuk in Mishlei, Halu Chazar v'lo ficha. A stranger should praise you, don't praise yourself. So how is Ovadia allowed to praise himself? And the answer is, as we said, that that's only true in a place where people know who he is and what level he's on, and not in a place where people don't know him. Rava says further, it's permitted for a Talmid Chacham, a tzorva mi Rabbanan, one of the young Talmidei Chachamim, to say that I am a tzorva mi Rabbanan, to say that he is on that level. Now, why would he say that? In order that he should have his court case judged first. The rule is the court will always judge the earlier case that comes, but Talmidei Chacham should be judged first so that they could go back to learning and shouldn't be spending time on court cases. How do you see the Talmidei Chacham allowed to do that? Like it says, Bnei David Kohanim Hayu, the children of David were Kohanim. Were they really Kohanim? Meaning to say that just like a Kohen takes first portion and he goes first, Talmid Chacham should also be like a Kohen, take first portion and go first. How do you know that a Kohen is supposed to do that? It says V'kidashta ki ezlachem lekecha hu makriv, and we have a brisa of the Beir Rabbi Shmuel says V'kidashta, you should make him holy. It means for everything in Kedusha, he should be the one to go first, a Kohen. He should be the one to lead Berachas Hamazon, and he should be the one to take the first portion. So those are rights of a Kohen, and you see from Bnei David and Kohanim that Talmidei Chachamim are compared and they have the same halacha. Next thing the Talmid Chacham is allowed to do, Rava says, is allowed to say that I'm not going to pay taxes, the head tax. He's allowed to refuse that based on his status as a Talmid Chacham, and that's learned out of a pasuk in Ezra, where it says, Minda veloi v'haloch, lo shalid le'mirmi alihim. The Gemara has a drasha that Minda refers to the portion that's given to the king as his own personal tax, veloi refers to the head tax for each individual, and halach refers to arnona, which the Rosh defines as a percentage of animals that are given to the crown. Now, Rava says further, it is permitted for Talmid Chacham to get out of paying a tax by saying I am a servant of Nura. I'm a servant of a fire. Now, people are going to understand that he means that he's a servant of a priest to the god of fire in Avodah Zarah, that people worship fires. And what he really means is that he's a servant to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's called Eish Ochla. Now, he's allowed to say that. The Chiddush here is that even Talmud Chacham was allowed to say that. Other people are for sure, as long as they're Mechavin L'Shem Shemayim, and in this way, they will get out of having to pay the tax. What's the reason that they're allowed to say this? Because they don't really mean it. All they're trying to do is chase a lion away from attacking them, meaning to say chase the tax collector away from taking their possessions away. Now, similar story, the Gemara says Rav Ashi had a forest and he sold it to the people who served the fire god. They were going to burn the forest to the fire god. So the fire Avodah Zarah. So it says Ravina said to Rav Ashi, it's lifnei iver. You're giving them what they need to be over Avodah Zarah. So he said, no, the majority of wood is used for fireplaces to provide heat, and we could assume that that's what it's going to be used for as well. We don't have to assume that it's going to be used for the fire god, even though that's who they are. And now we get to the next Mishnah. The Mishnah defines more terms as to how we define time and time periods for Hilchos Nedarim. So if somebody says they make a neder ad hakatzir until the harvest. Katzir generally refers to grain, but which grain? So the Mishnah says it refers to wheat grain, the harvest of wheat. As soon as people start harvesting wheat, that is when the neder ends or begins, depending on how he expressed it. It does not apply to barley because barley is not the standard grain, and people say harvest, they mean wheat. Now, the Mishnah says, however, that does change based on the place. If you're in a place where the main staple is barley, or if there's a difference between how early or late they harvest the wheat, such as if someone's on a mountain and they harvest later, so then he means the harvest on the mountain. If he's in the valley and they harvest later, then he means the harvest, and then they harvest earlier, then he means the harvest in the valley. So it all goes by the place, and that's the overriding rule. Now, what if somebody says, I make a neder until the rain, until the rains, until Adag Shamim? So then that goes until the rains actually fall. If he says until the Revia falls, Revia is the second rainfall that makes the crops sprout. So Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that's only until the time of Revia comes. Doesn't mean where the rain actually falls, it means the time of the rainfall for that. Now, if he says until the rains end, so what does that mean? So that means until the rainy season ends. Machlok is what that is. According to Rabbi Meir, it's until Nisan ends, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's when Pesach is over. Now the Gemara begins with the Brisa discussing the harvest. So it says he makes a neder until the kayetz, until the fig harvesting season in the Galil, and he goes down to the valley and he finds that there the kayetz has already begun because the valley things ripen earlier. Still, he does not get to use that since he made the neder in the Galil where it's mountainous and it takes longer. He goes by the Galil, he doesn't go by the later time in the valley.